So, what is your involvement with the situation going down here?
I am a resident of Tenino, and these 5 level 3 sex offenders who are classified through DSHS as sexually violent predators are moving in our community. There's going to be 5 of them in one house, so 5 men with 2 chaperones. So my involvement is I am a concerned community member. There are not safety measures put into place, and that's our concern. Is we've got a for-profit company housing 5 men from McNeal Island coming to live in Tenino, Washington.
So what was the timetable for learning about this, and then also for what you've gathered for any PACs or any groups or information pertinent to mitigating this?
Sure. The CEO of Supreme Living, she informed the Thurston County Commissioners on, I believe, January 11th or January 12th that she was going to be moving in the first level 3 sex offender scheduled for February 3rd. So our county commissioners learned about that. Angela Ronaldo, the CEO of Supreme Living, posted to a small Facebook post through the Tenino Bucota Facebook, which isn't even the correct city. Bucota isn't it. So she posted that she's going to be hosting a town hall meeting, and she did that on January 11th. So within this small 2-week timeline, we were able to get our concerned citizens together, create some Facebook groups, and really rally with the Sheriff's Office and the Thurston County Commissioners to raise these questions that we still have unanswered.
And the third question I did have, there are a couple of people, including those in DSHS and others, that essentially didn't come. What were your thoughts on that, and what were their names?
I don't know the exact names. I know that they were representatives with the Department of Corrections and Department of Social and Health Services. I can't answer why they weren't here tonight. I just received a notification that they did cancel on tonight's meeting. We all have assumptions. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer on that. So our community still has unanswered questions from DOC and Department of Social and Health Services, and we need answers.
So, if you haven't figured my style out yet, I don't write speeches. We just kind of go off the whim. So far, it's a lot of great organic conversation about the community, and so that's what I plan on doing here again today. So none of this has any real structure to it. The plan for the night is that we will essentially cover some of these sex offender housing stuff, what the Sheriff's Office knows. We'll try to answer any questions that you guys have about it. And then we will also move on at the end, because obviously we got stood up tonight by our state government, and that's a negative, obviously. But I think that the best thing that I felt we could do was make something positive out of it. So the end of this, we're just going to turn into kind of a town hall about the Sheriff's Office. What do you guys want to see? What are your concerns? We'll share some of our vision with you, and we'll end on a positive note. That's kind of the plan for the night. So first of all, I'd like to do some basic introductions. If we can give a round of applause for County Commissioner Gary Edwards. When she gets here. I know I saw congressional candidate Joe Kent in the back somewhere. Clint Endicott is in the back as well. He's the one who I first reached out to about, hey, can we use Tenino High School? And he's like, give me 5 minutes. And then 5 minutes later, he's like, we got you. So. Am I missing anyone? I know I probably am. I kind of got here in a whirlwind. Mayor, yes, yep, Tenino Mayor Wayne Fournier, thank you. Do we have any Tenino City Council members who are here tonight? If you could please stand for us, we will just do a round of applause. I think that's what we've got so far. If I miss anyone, I'm not trying to exclude you. Okay, so the state government. I'm not very happy with them, and I'm just going to vent for a minute. And I'm not trying to rile anyone up, but we had confirmed, when I met with our state government, we confirmed that they were all good to go, that they were going to show up, and they were going to be a part of this. And that was what my ask was. They apologized. They said they made a number of mistakes. Most notably, they sent a notification to the sheriff's office, and that my predecessor may have gotten that notification, but I didn't get that. I didn't get any of that. There was no transition, so that wasn't passed on to me. So a number of apologies were made, and that was okay, fine. And I said, you guys owe it to our community to come out here and answer some questions. You will sit up here on a table. I will stand here at the podium, and people will raise their hand. That's usually how these things work. The second thing was the security, and I said, well, how many deputies do we have here tonight? We've got sergeants, we've got deputies, we've got a chief, we have an undersheriff, lieutenant, we have lieutenant, we have Tenino police chief, we have Tenino police officers. And at no point in time did they offer to bring any of their state troopers or any of their security. Again, when I look at these things, you know, if the sheriff's office had something they needed to do and there was a security concern, we'd make it happen. The state government has 100 times the resources that we do. They just didn't feel like making it happen. That's what makes me mad. And so, now I'm going to cool off a little bit. Sarah Fox and some of the people that have been working behind the scenes, I know Kendall Tunnel's probably in here. If you guys want to come up and just kind of give a brief update on what you guys wanted to speak about, now would probably be a good time for that. If we can give them a round of applause on the way up.
Unfortunately, Kendall is sick today, so it is just I and Sarah here to represent our group. And we don't really have many updates for you. We just have a statement we would like to make to those that did not show. So I'm Carrie Jeter, and I'm one of the 3 volunteers leading the charge in this just cause along with Sarah Fox and Kendall Tuttle. And we have a few comments to make. Certain state agencies and government officials have begun to employ certain fear tactics to attempt to silence us. They are telling us that our rights don't matter. It's like they are telling us that our consent is not needed for them to do whatever it is that they want to do to us. It's like they are activating the same tactics that sexually violent predators have done to their victims, and we will not tolerate it. Predatory behavior means any conduct evidencing egregious, habitual, or continuing attempts to misuse power, authority, position, or situation to abuse, exploit, or harm others. We are standing here today to speak against these state agencies and certain government officials. You will not inflict pain upon this community or fear upon our families, nor will you threaten us without a fight. As a group, we have been peaceful, professional, respectful, and we have repeatedly asked for an open, transparent, and honest conversation to find a resolution that works for everyone, and that continues to be denied to us. Silencing us into submission, ghosting us when we ask hard questions, gaining an opportunity of trust like tonight, and then not showing under the guise of safety concerns is gaslighting. We are all paying attention to the truth that certain state agencies and elected officials are misusing their role and their authority in attempts to cause us harm, outright ignoring us as though our needs, our wants, and our rights are not valid. This, by definition, is exactly what predatory grooming is. They are asking for a mass scale of trauma to be inflicted upon this community. They are asking on a mass scale to re-victimize many survivors whom we have gotten to know through this process. The state is overlooking their responsibility and accountability to the constituents who have the right to vote. For me personally, I did not serve in the United States Army or the governor of Washington State in the Washington National Guard to defend the Constitution and to protect the rights of the American people simply for mine to be stripped from me. There is a responsibility of the government who represents the people to act on behalf of the people. So just want to remind everybody who is in this room and anyone who's helping us in this just cause, I urge you to remember that together we are powerful. Together we can make a difference. Together we are louder than their silence. That's all we have for tonight.
So my plan here is to basically just kind of go over a snapshot of how this came to be to the sheriff's office. I had no idea what was going on. That's how that worked. I got elected, and all of a sudden, this giant flaming sandwich got placed on my lap. So how this all started for me is that I got a Facebook message from Sarah, who was just up here, that was like, hey, there's this sex offender house thing going into Tenino. Will you show up at a town hall thing at the Kodiak Hall? And I'm like, sure. And wow, I had no idea what I was walking into. Essentially, after having conversations with DOC, it sounds like Supreme Living went and had this town hall, I guess, where they basically said, this is happening, we're doing it, but we don't have any answers for you. And part of the big problem I have with that is that I can appreciate the sincere attempt to inform the community. What I can't appreciate is that there was just completely misleading facts that were presented by Supreme Living. The first thing I asked was, so, like, what's the security look like in a house like this? And she goes, well, I mean, there's locks on the insides of the doors, and that was it, right? It's basically like, you know, we're taking sexually violent predators, we're placing them in a house, it's permanent housing, we're telling them they can never go anywhere, and then it's like, honor system, please don't go anywhere. DOC has since basically told me that they don't know what Supreme Living was doing. They have no idea why they did that, that they do have ankle monitors, that they've never had someone actually escape from one of their LRAs. And so that was the information that was passed on to me that at least provided some clarification as to what's even going on with this. And so I attended the Supreme Living, I wasn't happy. DOC and DSHS and SEC came in, we had this conversation. Obviously, I don't need to tell you what I've been doing out in the community, trying to raise some awareness in between then, and then DOC and DSHS backed out of today's meeting, which tells me that there's no real review that's going into this. So the commissioners and myself and a number of other entities all got together and we discussed a lot of this stuff. I've been meeting with Commissioner Edwards and Commissioner Mejia ad nauseum. And I know that the commissioners wrote a letter basically stating that their septic system isn't up to code and that that's created us a buffer of time potentially. The issue that we're having is that, you know, if you look at a corporation like Supreme Living, they can probably address those really easily. They have the capital and things like that to fix this stuff and make it all compliant. And so that's the concern, is that this stuff is going in whether we like it or not, and our state officials are using vague, you know, social media threats that, to my knowledge, not that the sheriff's office would be investigating this, because quite frankly, their office isn't in Thurston County jurisdiction, so they need to report it elsewhere. But those threats are occurring, and just so that we're clear, no one should be threatening our state government. No one should be doing that. That is not productive. That is not going to help us get anywhere. I don't believe that anyone who made the time and effort to come to this town hall is probably one of those people who made threats online to our government. That's not going to get us anywhere. It creates an excuse for them to basically back out of any of their liabilities to us as people. So I want to make that part clear, that we should not be making threats of any kind. That being said, you know, if the government came to a screeching halt every time someone made a threat on social media, I'd love to start teleworking. I'd love to start teleworking and not coming to work. It's not how this is supposed to work, right? You make accommodations. They could have been here today by Zoom, but they chose to host a webinar at a later date. So, with that being said, that kind of gives you an idea of where we are. Immediately, I got together with my command staff and we started figuring out what our procedure is going to be if one of these people leaves the house. So what we know now is that the ankle monitors, let me back up one more time and let you guys know why the sex offender thing to me is so problematic. Thurston County Sheriff's Office has a really bad history with sex offenders. If you guys can remember, just maybe, I don't know, two years ago, DOC let out someone who I think it was something like rape first degree and assault first degree with a deadly weapon. He served his prison sentence and they gave him an early out or something like that. He may have even been part of this LRA. He cut his ankle monitor off with a knife that he stole from Walmart the first day he got out, drove to Yelm, attempted to rape an elderly woman, and when one of our female deputies responded, he stabbed her in the neck with a buck knife. That was my first real exposure to sex offenders, okay? Then, just a couple weeks ago, our Thurston County Narcotics Task Force goes to apprehend someone for failing to register as a sex offender for the 4th time. He rams both of their patrol cars and flees, okay? And now we've got this sex offender house. So we are continuing to see escalating behavior by sex offenders that aren't being held accountable by the state. That is a big concern to me as your sheriff. That being said, we went back and we started looking at all the things that we could do as a sheriff's office under the premise that the sheriff's office has no ability to say that this house does or does not go in. That's not our prerogative, that's not our scope of government. Our focus is on what happens when one of these people leaves. So we are developing, we're pretty much developed our procedure now that we will flood the area with resources. We will call in a canine if one is not available on duty. If the person flees in a vehicle, we've amended our pursuit policy to make sure our deputies know that all levels of escape are pursuable. So if they get into a car, we're not just going to watch them drive away like some of the state representatives want us to. We're going to pursue them until the ends of the earth, until we get them back into custody. But again, now they're back into the realm of what the state government wants to do with them. And so I just want to make sure that you guys know the sheriff's office is going to make every single attempt to keep these people within the confines of that house as best we can. With that being said, Commissioner Edwards, you want to say something? Or do you want to go into Q&A?
Well, I'll give a little breakdown from our perspective.
The first thing I'd like to say is that Commissioner Mejia is with you 100%. She has been there all along. Now, she's not here right now. Something probably came up, but I can tell you that she is right there, every bit as concerned as you folks are. So I suppose she's going to be here in a little bit. But there are a couple of things that the sheriff mentioned, and the septic system was one of them. The water that's provided to this residence, that's another unique system on these type of situations, if you will. The kitchen, it has to be a commercial type kitchen if they're going to be serving food here. And security is really lacking, really lacking. And one of the things that came out early on in this was in the job application, there was the word was out there that, we're looking for young people. We'll give you 3 days training, and we would hope that no women apply. And it kind of lets you know that there might be something going on there, that they do have some concerns. And so anyway, from my perspective, it really lit up red flags, and we did not get notified. It says in the RCW that we do need to get notified. We did not. I'm not aware that the sheriff's office even got a sex offender notice, because I don't think they knew about it at that point in time.
We did.
They did get something?
If it's just one person who's being registered as a sex offender, we get those all day
And
long.
you get them
So,
all the time.
red flag there.
And you have to remember that the folks that put this together, this is all voted on by your legislators. You gotta look around and see who put this together. I'm not here to campaign for anybody, but you might look around and see who put this together and who signed off on it. Because it's an ongoing battle. They keep talking about, well, the federal Constitution protects and legislation and the Americans with Disabilities Act and the federal housing and all that. Well, there's nothing like this going on in other states. I'm not saying they aren't attempting to do some things, but most states this is not going on. We all live under the same Constitution. Just so you know that they're using, they use things to their advantage when they can. And I'm going to encourage all of you to look up the particular legislation involved in this. I'm not going to try and give some kind of a lecture on that, but you will see all kinds of inconsistencies where public safety is supposedly the main issue, but it's the least of the issues that are addressed in the reality of trying to implement this. There is no public safety involved where the legislation definitely says there should be public safety as the top priority. Now, if you get an opportunity, and I don't think anybody wants to write this down, but the Attorney General's opinion from 2021, it's, and the number is 2021-04 from the Washington State Attorney General's office, Bob Ferguson's office. They're the ones that gave the legal coverage, if you will, that, well, you gotta let this in. We, local government, cannot keep this from happening in our area the way it's written. So you take a look at that, and then you'll see inconsistencies all through it. One of the things that we hope will take place is there's a section in there where the county prosecutor, in this case, the first offender that they're sending to us, is from out of the area. And so when he comes to this area, there's a requirement that we get notified that this offender is coming. Our county prosecutor then has the ability to bring an action in court to address your concerns. And I was hoping maybe we'd have somebody here from the county prosecutor's office tonight, but I'm sure they are looking into it. That's all I can say about that at this point. And I'm sure, you know, most lawyers, they're not going to want to get up here to give you, well, it depends. The answer to every question, well, I don't know, but it depends. And I'm not saying that to be detrimental to the attorneys in the group. It's just the reality of what we are up against. So the county commission is working on your behalf. I think I'll cover most of my, I've got 5 or 6 issues here that I think are very pertinent, and I'll try to get to those and mix them in with questions rather than me trying to sit up here and cover everything, and you're going to have those questions anyway. So let's do a question and answer. Sure. Okay.
So to keep some form of structure to this, we will keep the Q&A right this moment for anything pertaining to the Tenino Sex Offender House, as opposed to a general Q&A. And then just keep in mind, we're missing 2 people at this table. So there may be some questions that my answer is I don't know. I will try my best to answer them. If it's pertaining to something affiliated with the sheriff's office, you should get an answer out of me. If it's pertaining to something with the commissioner's office, then with the commissioners, then you should probably get an answer out of here. But just keep in mind, I just want to get that feedback. So we'll start taking a couple of Q&As. Yes, sir.
Shareholders, LLP, you got some idea what that is?
You sorry, yes, speak up to what?
Supreme Living is the LLP, so who are the shareholders? I guess where the shareholders are?
His question is that Supreme Living is an LLC. Are we aware of who the shareholders are? No, we are not. We know we've met the CEO. We've met some of the board of their management at that meet and greet, if that's what you want to call it, but we don't know who the shareholders are.
Let me just say one other thing in that regard. If you think about the philosophy of the state of Washington, it has always been against private prisons because we want everybody to get a fair shake. But this is nothing more than a private prison with a different name. So you might just think about how they kind of weasel around to get around things, but just think about that.
Yes, sir.
County records show that that land is deeded as residential, but this is a business. So if this is a business, how are they getting around that?
I'm going to tell you how they're getting around it, but I don't like you to take that as I'm advocating for it. When they wrote this legislation that allows this, they preempted our codes. All the county codes and zoning have been set aside. They don't need to have a business the same as you might have to have. If you're going to run a business out of your home, you need to apply and follow a bunch of issues, tax codes and all kinds of things, how it might affect the neighborhood. These folks do not have to do that. That's part of that legislation that was written that allowed this to happen in our community. And you know, the sad thing is, this is an experiment. This is the first time they've actually went full-blown where they're putting sex offenders in this category into our community. And in doing so, it's kind of an experiment. This could come to your community shortly. If they are successful in pushing this through, you might talk to your friends that live outside of this area and let them know this is a conscious effort to empty out McNeal Island. And McNeal Island houses the most dangerous, worst of the worst. So I'm not going to call them, folks. I'm going to let the sheriff do that.
Just a caveat on that, least or less restrictive, whatever it is, the LRAs are not new. That is an old term that's been used for a long time. What is new in this legislation is that the state has found that it is cheaper and easier, especially with labor shortages, to contract this out to private corporations and then drop all the regulations for it, which is how you end up with a house for sexual violent predators in Tenino. Normally, this would be housed somewhere where they go through all the correct zoning, they have all the things. All the regulations have been essentially dropped on that. That's what the new legislation has led to, and that's why we're the guinea pig for it. Next question.
When was this passed?
2021. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, we didn't receive notification in our community about who was supposed to come in 3 days. This is who was supposed to come in 3 days. His name is Ryan Jennings Force. And when we attended our meeting with the Green Living, they talked about how much people being really old, doing wheelchairs, and not really posing much of a threat. But he's 57 years old, and I can tell you that he went to prison for what he did to a 6-year-old girl and a 5-year-old boy. He was for 7.5 years for that. You can tell how much the little things he did. He has a whole list here of sexual assault against people who were never met. He's a true predator. So we have no idea about this, and he's supposed to be here in 3 days. The question I have for you is that we have information that he went over any place to an LRA, and he was sent back to jail. So that's the definition of insanity, to keep trying this and hope for a different result. He's already failed in LRA placement. Do you have any information on what cost him to be returned to McNeal Island after they tried to do some more program?
I don't have any information about him already being in an LRA and being sent back. So, no, I don't have any information on that, unfortunately. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry to bite just a bit here, because I've been doing research on, so Senate Bill 5163, brought forth by not the 4 women who did it, but Christine Ross out of Senior Coast Guard. She brought it forth because a sexual violent predator house was installed in her district without any knowledge, without 30-day notification, without anything. So there was already legislation in place prior to this 2021. This is not brand new. Prior to her trying to tweak it so that residents would have to say what's going on around them and their safety. So I'm really passionate right now because I want people to do their homework, and I want like a factual list, and I don't want partisan crap, because you're going to lose people and get sensationalized and the facts get skewed, and you blame people that were actually trying to help. I want you to listen to these senators. So that's one thing. And the other thing I want to say, I probably have more about. The second thing is, I've been thinking of alternatives. You can't try to change something that is necessary, and they have their reasons why this legislation was originally brought back. From what I understand, there were court cases where you can't hold people indefinitely until they can make claims, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're in a double bind in the country. You want to allow people to freedom, but you want to lock people up and they do that. Most of them may. Many of them may not. Okay, so what I want to say is if we're going to try to change legislation, which is really where we're headed, we need to present alternatives. So if you can give them mention me, and then I'll finish. As try to house them more near industrial areas, away from residential, try to house them near sheriff and police precincts, which I thought was a great idea. Try to house them, what was the third one? Oh, military, thank you. Military bases. Even though there's family military bases still still have that kind of like, don't you dare, don't you even think about it, right? So we need to get that, and don't be partisan in sensational emergencies, and we need to think of viable alternatives to present to our legislators. Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't really want to comment on that because a lot of what I want to reply with to that is opinion. But I would just say that I agree that when we talk about the legislation and stuff like that, that you can't just complain about a problem, that you need to actually bring a viable solution to the table. At the same time, there's an island we can put them on. And you know, it's also really important to understand that not all sex offenders are the same. They just aren't. There are different levels to them. McNeal Island is level 3, sexually violent, worst of the worst, according to DSHS. So we're not talking about like the guy who got drunk and peed in front of a playground on accident and ended up going to McNeal Island and now he's locked up there forever. She just described someone who raped a 6-year-old boy and girl. So I think that's my initial response to that is that does sexual assault not occur on military bases already? Do we not already have issues of women getting assaulted and sexually harassed and assaulted in the military? Like, I look at all this stuff, the police precinct is maybe a good idea, but you know where we usually place our police precincts? Next to schools. Right. So that when someone goes in to hurt our kids, we can run across the street. So I appreciate that, and I do agree. And I've from the beginning, I've tried to take a really balanced approach to this of like, I get it. There's a court ruling, and what the judges rule, that's how it has to be, and the legislator has to respond to that. But I think a better alternative to contracting this out to the lowest bidder, a CEO of a company, would be to maybe just invest that money and create some specifically designed and purpose-built LRAs. Go build it in the mountains of Enumclaw, wherever, right? Where you put a glass wall around them, and they can gaze out into the forest and be less restricted. No, absolutely. And I'm not saying put it. I meant I'm sorry. No, absolutely. But what I'm saying is that you could purpose build something like this if the state actually invested the money and make it an actual facility that is less restrictive, that isn't a 5-bedroom rambler in Tenino. That's just my idea on that. So.
How about the prosecutors? Prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. Will that help if they get a longer sentence?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the prosecution is fine because they're getting convicted and whatnot, becoming sex offenders in the first place. So, the question was what happened. I'm going to start repeating the question because I know it's hard to hear. The question is what happened to the 3 strikes law in Washington State? I don't know.
So is it a done deal that McNeal Island is going to be emptied? Is there anything we can do to stop this? Because these offenders have already been deemed as the most likely to reoffend. And so is there anything that we can do at this point to stop this action? And my other question would be, is it...
Now, hang on, I have to repeat your question, so okay. You're going with, I'm going to forget. Yeah. So the question was, is McNeal Island, is this already a done deal? Is McNeal Island being shut down? And is there anything that we can do to stop that? My initial response to that would be that your state representatives are the ones who ultimately dictate where money goes or where money doesn't go at the state level.
I've been told repeatedly they're not shutting down McNeal Island.
I've been told that as well.
I mean, that's conjecture here.
Yeah.
And we're assuming that they want to. We don't know if they are or not.
I believe
legislators have said, no, it's not being shut down. The CEO of McNeal Island said, no, we're not shutting it down. We have to have, some of these people cannot be released. Correct. And they're going through a process to try and figure out which ones can be released.
Correct.
But something that's bothering me, a lot of this is bothering me, but the fact that this person was not from Thurston County, this person was from Kitsap County, went through a Kitsap. Yeah, there's no accountability in it right now when they could cop shop for a friendly judge in a county on the other side of the state.
And that's a solution to a problem, right? Is making it to where, because that's how this, according to DOC, what they told me, is that basically when someone comes through McNeal Island and then they get to a point where they qualify to become an LRM, at that point in time, DOC basically picks a house, or they pick an applicant from one of these corporations that wants to make one of these houses a sex offender house, and DOC will go do an investigation on the house. So at some point last year, DOC went out to the house, and they told me they noted things like there's a ski lake, there may be children on the ski lake, this is a rural installation, there are a number of issues, there may be self-service issues, there may be internet issues. They bring power outages. They bring all of that back to a judge who then makes a decision on whether or not it's acceptable. Someone passed it. Someone said that this Tenino house was good enough for them, but as Mayor Fournier brings up, that could be a judge in King County, that could be a judge in Kitsap County, that could be a judge anywhere else that isn't actually liable for their actions here in Thurston County, where we want to take our frustrations out and vote someone else in. So I think that's an actual solution that the legislature should consider moving forward. So I want to take some more questions, and again, I have to repeat them. So, yes, ma'am.
I'm going to say one point about it not being partisan. I would agree on that. I think all of us want to protect our children, but the fact that like Senator Christine Rolfes is sitting there saying that, oh, they're potentially dangerous doesn't mean they're necessarily dangerous. That's garbage. That kind of wording and that kind of that's just you passing the buck onto somebody else because you can't answer the tough questions. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm tired of seeing, that I think all of them are tired of seeing. Like, give us the facts, give us the truth. Stop going behind our backs and saying ridiculous stuff. The difference between potentially dangerous and dangerous is the act. Any one of us are potentially dangerous sitting here. So that is the most garbage statement, and that's not partisan at all. That's just you are elected to protect us, and you're working for us, and that's the garbage statement you have to say about that. That's where people are starting to think about partisan stuff. That's where it becomes like, no, this is garbage. So I agree. I want to protect our children. I think we all agree. I think that's where we all draw the line. But I mean, come on, we need facts from these people. We need actual people that like you that are showing up and standing here and saying, I don't want this either. And how do we fight it? You know, I mean, we all are sitting here because we all don't want this to go forward. But it sounds like too bad somebody else above us has made it because Inslee wants to grow plants on the island. Well, that's ridiculous. It's absurd. So no real question, just in support of that. Yeah, it's not partisan, but you know, also give us something more than potentially dangerous isn't necessarily dangerous. These are level 3 disgusting predators. They are looking to do more harm, and everybody should be aware of that.
I agree. And kind of what we went off of earlier, right, is that this is Tenino's problem for now, not tomorrow.
Yeah, it's the first. It's just the first.
We're the first, but there's going to be another community. It'll be Enumclaw. It'll be the suburbs of Seattle. But what will be most telling is when this goes into someone who does have a say. When it goes into their neighborhood, that will be telling to see how the response is and how quickly that proposal is shut down. So I want to get back. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question on the cease and desist letter that the Thurston County Health Department wrote. Was it delivered? Did they receive it? Do they need to respond to it? Because I want to know if that letter did anything. Is anything stopped on February 1st? Because I know you guys wrote a letter, the health department wrote a letter. They put 3 things that needed to happen. But is Supreme Living required to respond to that cease and desist letter in some fashion?
Okay, I hope everybody can hear that. It's about the letter that the county commission directed the health department to look into and respond to. And that letter basically had to do with the water supply, with the septic system, and the health requirements of food service. And it basically says they will be out of compliance if they were to open up. Now, what does that mean? That's going to take another action. If they do, I don't think they will open myself because they would face that as an issue. And in the DOC legislation that's in place, the RCWs, it basically says they have to be in compliance. And before I introduce the chair of our board, I want to do one other quick thing. We can't give you, I can't tell you what might happen.
So they don't have to respond to it?
Oh, they don't have to respond, they have to fix all the violations. It's a violation notice.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what that's about. Sarah, I don't know if you're, I've got this call to action that Kevin brought up here, and the question came up about what can we do about it. Do you have a website that folks could sign up for, or is it on here?
We did make more copies, so they are on here. We'll spread out the copies, and then if you're able to take a picture on your cell phone.
Okay. Did you hear that? Sarah's got copies of how to go about. There's all your elected representatives. Let them know how you feel about this situation. Right now is a good time to get hold of those folks because we're just in the infancy of getting this situation solved. But let me introduce the chair of the Thurston County Commission, Commissioner Mejia.
Thank you all. I apologize, I was late. I was tracking the conversation on the Chronicle. In terms of the notice of violation we sent to them, like Commissioner Edwards said, there's really, it's speculation at this point what they're going to do or they're not going to do. Whether they're going to go ahead and move folks in on the 1st or not. But we are, we're making sure that they do not, that they comply with the notice of violation because it is a public health risk if live sewage or raw sewage is spilling out into the neighbor's yard. So that's another one of our concerns that we haven't heard back from DSHS on.
How will we know if they move in or not on the 1st?
Trust me, I'll let you know. I live across the street.
But it's real. I mean, like, how will we know if this is in place on February 1st?
Her question was, how will we know if someone moves in?
Yeah.
And the neighbor said, "You will." I look at the house every day. I'll know if someone moves into that house. Sir.
It's obvious to me that the state supports the criminals more than the citizens.
Thank you.
Well, my concern is when one of these bastards gets out and does something to a child, are they just going to be recycled back to that house? Because where are they going to put them?
No. DOC has said any violation of their LRA, whether they go outside of their ankle monitor scope, or if they assault a staff member, or they escape, or anything like that, is an automatic revoke back to McNeal Island.
Okay, thank you.
But that's too late.
That's what DOC told me.
This is a private business. They are motivated to not notify of a violation. I would think, right? They're making $38,000 a month off these people living there, and it is not to their benefit to have the shit back in McNeal. We're the money maker.
And therein lies the problem. Private prison, private contract, all those kinds of things create a for-profit system of abuse. And so, yes, sir.
Okay, as far as the violation of the code, these folks got deep pockets. They can fix that stuff in the New York minute. Okay, that is of no value to us at all. Number two, point of clarification, Howard just showed me a website that said DOC is closing McNeal Island. They had intended to close Larch to save money, and they said, no, Larch won't save us enough money. We'll save a lot more money by closing McNeal Island, money. You know, I mean, it's all about the buck.
The DOC shut down the prison, but DSHS still runs the SCC.
Correct.
So there was a shutdown of McNeal Island's prison with DOC. But DSHS, they're stuck on that island as far as they say.
So that's what's so important to know is that all these people have already done their prison sentence, and they're so dangerous that they were like, nope, you can't, you're still too dangerous to be in society. So even after their sentence was over, that's where they put them. And these are the people that they're going to put by our kids.
Yes, sir, in the back.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Good. It's been a long time since I filled this hall. My question ties off this guy right here. Hey, how you doing? Is there a way, since this was legislation, and a good portion of it is questionable whether it's constitutional or not, that the Thurston County prosecutors can put in a stay order so that we can get this at least stopped and fixed and possibly pushed away?
So the question was, in the matter of whether or not this is constitutional or not, can the Thurston County Prosecutor's Office, basically file an injunction, a cease and desist with our Superior Court. What I can tell you is that this week I'll be having those conversations with our prosecutor. I don't have the answer to that, and obviously the prosecutor's not here, but we are going to have those conversations. Now, some conversations I've had with the attorneys, because this legislation is so new, they wrote it pretty bulletproof. They covered a lot of ground in this legislation to make sure the what-if scenarios, right? What if the county commissioners just write a code that says no LRAs? What if they try to do this? Can the sheriff's office do that? Can the prosecutor's office? So they covered a lot of their bases, and that was something that the Thurston County, the lawyer that represents Thurston County brought up, is that a lot of this legislation is pretty bulletproof when it comes to legal action by the county that's impacted. And of course, in there they also say that the state's not responsible for any damages.
See, I'm not asking for the county to try to make up rules and regulations. We already got all of that kind of stuff in there. What I'm saying is that we need to sue the state. This is a state that's shoving something down our throat. We need to sue the state to get them to at least stop what they're trying to do to us right now. It's happened many times. It's happened on a federal level. I don't see why it cannot happen here. To get our lawyers, our prosecutors, to stand up for Thurston County and say, you can't do this because it was not done properly. Just because they voted for something does not make it constitutional. And we have seen that over the last 5 years minimum. Our prosecutors, I believe, need to do that for us today.
From the county commission point of view, these are all questions that we've asked. So I guess I would say I would encourage all of you to contact your county prosecutor. It is an elected office. He's accountable to all of you. So these questions need to be asked from Mr. John Tudenheim, and he needs to respond to all of you on this.
So, and just to clarify, my position when I go and talk with the prosecutor is very straightforward. It's going to be that this was handled so horrifically from start to finish, and the state has responded so abhorrently. They've backed out of agreements, and they have antagonized a small community so badly that public safety is jeopardized. That is going to be my argument. Now, when I take that argument as a sheriff with no college degree in criminal justice, well, then I don't know what the attorney's going to tell me back is, that's not a valid reason to file an injunction. That's not a valid reason to sue the state. It's just going to be a waste of all of our money. The attorney general's not going to take it, whatever it is, right? But that is going to be my argument to the prosecutor when I speak with him next week, is that everything that has happened here has gone so horrifically, and it's been so horrifically orchestrated by every entity, whether it's Supreme Living or this DSHS or DOC, that public safety has been jeopardized at this point. You have antagonized a small group of very concerned community members, and now it's not feasible, that they need to reconsider everything they've done here and maybe just start over. That's going to be my argument.
I just wanted to point out that the people who commit these crimes and the people at the state level that have made it possible for them to do this, none of them deserve the grace of the word potential. These people are proven dangerous. Period. They wouldn't be in McNeal Island if they weren't. And they will be for the rest of their lives, and we all know it. The people of this state, the people in government in this state, are always trying to find a way to pander to the scumbags that congregate here, and we need to put a stop to it.
My question's for the county commissioners. It seems like that we're not prepared in Tenino to deal with this particular problem, and I'm wondering why the county commissioners haven't placed a moratorium on this type of a facility, because we have seen in other areas where they've snuck things in like methadone clinics and things that the community doesn't want, that the first thing the commissioners in other counties were doing is put in a moratorium, readdress it through the planning commission, get their hands around what needs to be done, prep their police department, and it slows things down. I understand you can't lawfully prohibit it, but that does not mean that you can't put a moratorium in and get some code to go around all of this to control it coming in.
Well, I just have to remind you of the legislation that was passed. Now they've had these residences in place for about 20 years now, but they've adjusted the legislation so that they actually took our codes and ordinances out of play. So that's why we can't just get together and put together an ordinance or a code violation against this. That's where it takes the attorneys that are covering this to come up with strategy, and we're working with our attorneys to do that. And that attorney is presented to us by County Prosecutor Tunheim. So he's aware of what's going on, and I fully expect he's going to be engaged and helping us come up with a solution. It's just that none of this happens very fast. And when someone said earlier about these folks have a lot of money, they can fix these violations that the health department set out as notices of violations. It isn't that simple. They need to not only put in application, but then they need to have approval, and then they need to do the work, and then they have to have inspections. And I don't know, have some of you ever talked with your friends or something that have had to go through this nightmare? It's a process for county government. Anyway, so this isn't going to happen overnight. I do believe that we do have something in place that is going to create a timeout, let's say, to allow us to really work on this with other communities, with our legislators, because we've got legislators that are very, very concerned and active about this. I was up at the Capitol all week talking to our folks, and I can tell you, they're all in the game. They're with us. So,
you know,
Sheriff?
It would be a shame if they found pocket gophers on this property.
Back in 2019, and in 2021 there was an Attorney General opinion that basically shut down all of their ordinances and said that they were discriminating against these type of facilities. So we've looked at those options. We've really tried to throw everything at the wall, finding something that sticks. That was one of the options we looked at, and that, you know, we looked at the Kitsap County history and what they went through, and all of that really was shut down and tightened up in the legislature when that law passed in 2021.
They deemed them in that bill essential services, so no county is banning.
No, the Attorney General opinion basically, from what I understand, is that this was intentional. This isn't an accident. This isn't something we stumbled upon and there's loopholes for us to go around. That the Attorney General opinion and the new legislation was written to defeat county and city ordinances so that we cannot push back on this, that it does come down the hill, and that there is no alternative. We're still fighting against it, that's the idea.
law firm take this on and we work with them?
That would be the idea. Yeah, that would be it. How long did it take you guys to make a fight and win all the way to the Supreme Court?
2 years. But we have some change.
Sure. No, and that's not to say that that's not where this is going. But keep in mind, Supreme Court, not something that they're going to hear this tomorrow and fix our problems for us. So I know right now, the county commissioners are trying to solve right now. They're trying to fix that. Yeah, she doesn't have a question, but the statement was that that she's a great grandmother who lives next to the house with kids across the street. Yep. So the question is that I have to repeat your question because no one can hear you. So the question was that she lives next to the house. Her property value has likely declined, and these people are making money to house sex offenders. So who is going to compensate them for the loss of property value? And once again, I would say that the state has absolved any responsibility for that through the legislation. And last part of the question.
Another question. Who's going to pay for the security to protect ourselves? These people are can't this be something that we can make them pay for it and take their property?
So the last question was that the state has basically placed these sex offenders in there. They're a danger to society, and being that they're a for-profit company, why can't they pay for the security that costs to basically? And that is another fantastic question. And that's, I think, some of the frustration that a lot of people have with our state government is they continue to make unfunded mandates, and they do all these things without any funding behind them. And then they just basically push all the problems down on the local governments. Same thing, I've already explained that Thurston County Sheriff's Office has one deputy out here. And so, again, it'd be worth mentioning, okay, then pay for another deputy to patrol this area. Pay for security, something to make people feel better, and none of that is written into the language of these laws. So,
Can they adjust those levels
yes.
at will?
Yes. Usually I believe and Chief Mencius can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the level 1, 2, 3 sex offender stuff, the sheriff's office has some input on a lot of that stuff too, especially when we send out notifications. Those levels move back and forth. And it's based on things like visits with psychologists, risks to reoffend, criminal offenses that they actually initially committed. And so those numbers do move back and forth. Let's move to the back here. Yes, ma'am.
So worst case scenario, this thing goes through, is there any tools that the sheriff's office and the county and other people can give me as a person who lives alone to make sure that if one of them does get loose, that I can defend myself?
So tools.
What about an Amber Alert?
As far as tools for the sheriff's office to provide you to protect yourself?
Yeah, or education or something.
Yeah, the idea is that we'll probably push out a notification through all the major news outlets, through social media, everything like that for a lockdown when we send dogs out after the person who flees. Yeah. We don't have like a handout gun program or anything like that. As much as that'd be great, they would immediately probably make some legislation to ban it. I'm sorry, what was that? Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear that last part.
She wanted to know if there's some kind of siren or what kind of notification the community is going to know.
I don't see any reason why Thurston County is going to expedite it. And then I'm gonna try and finish up the sex offender part, and then finish the last part of this with just general questions for either the sheriff's office or the commission.
Just to follow up on that, they're not going to get to the head of the line in front of everybody else that's applied. Let me just assure you of that. So we will do what we can do to solve this problem, but we have to work within the law. We have no choice about that. So as much as I'd like to do something different, not allowed, times have changed. We're kind of turned into a civilized country that tolerates some of this for some reason. I don't know if that's a good idea, but it is the way we are today. And we're going to do everything we can do. I can assure you that myself and Commissioner Mejia and the board are going to do everything we can do to alleviate as many problems as we can associated with this. I can't sit here and promise that we're going to get X, Y, or Z, but I can tell you we're going to make a big difference. We have already made a big difference, and really, Sarah brought it to our attention some time back, and it's this whole activity by the community. This is what is really bringing the pressure to bear. So, I'm Sheriff, you don't have all that.
So I just wanted to go back to the ankle monitor situation because, again, really frustrated that DOC and DSHS is not here tonight. But one of my main questions, and I think the main questions of the community, has been the connectivity issues. And they DOC expressed their concerns regarding their research and understanding of the potential lack of service coverage for the area and what issues it may cause with their GPS units. There have been no examples at this time of what issues will be. So they have questions about their own ankle monitors and how their GPS units are going to work. And the county as well has concerns about that. The sheriff has concerns about that. And we've gotten no answers back from DOC and DSHS. And these are questions that we have been asking as a whole. So I completely understand your concerns about the ankle monitors. We have the same concerns. We just haven't gotten any answers.
Yeah, my question is, do you recommend we attend that virtual meeting, or should we just all say, don't attend, or do you want us to attend that virtual meeting with DSHS and DOC?
No, definitely attend. I am extremely upset they're not here tonight. They embarrassed me, and I think they did a disservice to everyone who showed up tonight and changed their plan. This is my day off. This is probably a lot of your days off too. And for the state government to disrespect that and back out, I think was unacceptable. However, they're offering on February 1st that you can sign into this webinar and address your issues there. I think everyone should break that server.
So my other part of the question is TC alert, and I know there's a lot of regulations of what alerts should be used for, but that might be something that you question Sonia at emergency management to find out if TC alert, if you could make it through just for the people in that area, so if somebody is engaged, you could send them an alert. That's just a solution that it's the software that we already have in the county.
So speaking of that, and I'd like to try and transition into just a general Q&A now, because I don't want to spend the whole night talking about questions that a lot of us can't answer because we're seeing a couple entities up here. So we put out our crime analyst position, and that's already apparently received like 35 applicants across the country, which is really good news because that means that we might have the opportunity to get a really, really qualified candidate. One of the things that I'm trying to push is to revamp the Thurston County Sheriff's Office app, and that would probably be the most effective way. I know not everyone has a cell phone, so we could probably incorporate just standard text messages into that. But that is probably going to be the most integrated local way for us to actually get an alert out to you guys. Just because it's going to take so long to try and make a new alert through the state government. The same state government that isn't here tonight probably isn't going to want to make a sex offender alert. It's just, That's just the reality of it. So we have to find our solutions locally. That's what a lot of this stuff comes down to. So with that being said, let's open it up for just standard questions for either the commissioner's office or the sheriff's office.
The people who are in office are not the ones that are here representing you. That's a big sign. Friday, when we went to go, I think it was Friday, when we went to go have lunch with Jay Inslee, he didn't want to join. So it's the people, the senators that passed the bill, like Derek and Gary said, they did it under the guise of COVID. They put in all the they closed all the loopholes. So when it comes to election time, please remember who showed up and who didn't.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that.
So my question is actually for law enforcement about our rights. Because if one of these guys breaks out, busts their ankle bracelet, you guys know that no normal house is secure if somebody wants to get in. So if one of these offenders gets into one of our homes and one of us defends ourselves, they get hurt, what are our rights as far as that goes? Because the state put us in this situation.
Well, I would tell you that if a sexually violent predator gets into your house, make sure you call us. Make sure you call us. Yeah, we need to know. Yeah, this isn't like a call 411 before you dig or whatever it is. So make sure you call us. But again, right, like in all seriousness, right? If someone breaks into your house with the intent to do harm, you have a right to defend yourself. Where people get in trouble is when someone is trespassing or someone is stealing their catalytic converter and they tie them up and drive them down the street and kill them. Like, that's where things get out of control, right? But everyone in this room, I'm confident, knows what's right and what's wrong. We know what to do and what not to do. We know when we're truly being threatened, and we know when we can call the cops and just, yeah, he's knocking on the door, he's acting weird, we'll just wait, right? So my suggestion to you would be to lock your doors, right? Don't force a confrontation. That's not going to help you in a court of law. And if someone breaks into your house, then you have a right to defend yourself. Yes, sir. Yeah.
I would say this American hero right here had his arm up. Thank for pretty much the entire meeting.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to
For Thurston County Sheriff's Department, so you were mentioning about notification. So from the LRA, what is the distance, the radius distance that you would push out notification of level 3 sex offenders coming into the area? 2 miles, 3 miles, 5 miles, the entire county? What are we talking?
Does someone have an answer for that for the sheriff's office? I was never in the sex offender unit, so.
I don't know what the requirement is, but there is a specific requirement. I don't know if it's 2 miles or 3 mile radius.
I've always heard 2 miles, but unfortunately, I don't have a sex offender. I do have one right now. So, what's that? If you called up to the sheriff's office during a Monday, our sex offender detective works detective hours. We can absolutely answer that question for you, but we have a special guy who does all of that. So he's the one who handles all of the sex offender notifications. He does all of their check-ins and going out and making contact with you. So, what's that? Yeah, he's Detective Blankenship. So, yes, sir.
Did our missing guests provide you with credible proof of threats, so-called threats? And is there a reason why they scheduled their webinar for the first, which is supposed to be the first day that this guy's supposed to move in?
So the question was, did DOC or DSHS, did they actually provide us with what the threats were? To my understanding, that is no. And part of the reason for that is that, and again, I'm not trying to go to war with the state, but they need to report that to the jurisdiction from which it belongs, and DOC isn't in unincorporated Thurston County. So even if they did file a report for that, it wouldn't have been with the sheriff's office, if that makes sense. Right? It's kind of like, well, we're not responsible to take that threat.
They use a blanket statement to get out of this meeting.
And one of the things, right, is I'm not discounting the fact that some people on the internet probably said some crazy stuff about the state government. I fully believe that probably occurred. But again, there's no way that I can come before you guys and pretend like it doesn't look like that. then it doesn't look like they just didn't want to show up, and that they don't want to come here and answer questions. And frankly, I'm just not in a position right now where I feel super inclined to go out of my way to defend the state. When they could have done a number of different things. They could have brought their own security. They could have came in via Zoom. They could have done all sorts of different things, but the letter was very clear. It was, we're not coming, sorry. Yes, sir.
So, I've lived here for about 25 years.
Speak up.
I'm sure the people have lived here longer, but my question is, to go with the mayor, this building, this company is going to receive $38,000 per person, right?
I was told 32,000, but yeah.
Okay, well, let's just, I did the math for 38, so that's $190,000 a month.
Yep.
All right, so in relation to her question was that the letter that went out for cease and desist, what kind of teeth does that have? If they say, well, I'm going to get a $5,000 fine a month, and they get $200,000, that's nothing.
Yep, and the commissioner's already answered that. That's
so who is ultimately responsible? Who is overseeing? Is it DOC, DOJ? Who is responsible?
DSHS.
Once these people get placed in the house, now these people, this company's getting $200,000 a month, and they're going to get a $5,000 fine if they don't comply with the health department. What do they care? If I'm a businessman, I'm going to say, well, I'm still making $190,000.
Yeah.
So who is the ultimately responsible if they escape or if they don't escape? Who's gonna? Where are the teeth coming from to enforce this injunction?
There's a couple different questions there, but I think we've already kind of answered that. Is that the county commission is basically putting that letter out, and of course you can just continue to fight through the violations and run it. But the second question for the escape part would be the sheriff's office. We're going to be the primary responders if someone escapes.
Can they condemn the house though if you have repeated violations? Isn't there a way to condemn a house because it's, you know, the septic doesn't work and you can't have occupancy?
So if they violate this notice, it does give us, as Commissioner Edwards put it, more teeth. It gives us more of a power to actually take this to the courts because it's giving us an actual legal reason onto why.
But in the meantime, they still have 5 people living there.
So far they only have one plan for February 1st, is what we've been told.
Right, but I'm just saying that if it was to go and they went the 16 days or whatever it takes to get 5 people total in there, there's still, what's the recourse?
So
they still have the people there.
I mean, it's only, right now, it's only one person, right? If they move that one person, they violate this, then we have the ability to file something immediately with the court and vacate them out. But if you know, it all comes down whether they violate this or not on February 1st. That's kind of our key date that we're waiting for. We're not going to be waiting for any more dates to come through. If February 1st they decide to move through, then at that time is when we actually have something to fight back on.
Yes, ma'am.
So my question is for the county commissioner, have you spoken with like the masses of other county commissioners and kind of let them know what's happening so we can be like a larger force to fight them? So are they aware?
Yeah, so I'm part of the Washington State Association of Counties. We all are. I represent Thurston County on the Legislative Steering Committee, which is basically we all come together to kind of talk about our legislative actions. I brought this at our previous meeting. A lot of our surrounding counties are aware of this, and we're all signing on to see what the legislator is doing, and the Washington State Association of Counties is going to be backing that up. So we are all talking right now. It's just been really hard because everything has been changing every day at a time. We thought we had a chance with the ordinances that Kitsap County passed, and then we came and we saw that there was an AG opinion. So we're getting information every day on this, on what we can do or what we cannot do. But yes, we have been discussing this as counties, with Thurston County being the first one, really.
And my other question is where is the county commissioner on the idea of changing these laws of making it a sexual assault a violent crime? I mean, I personally have a family member who is doing life in prison. He cannot get out, and it was not for a sexual assault. It was for drugs and guns. And so I think it's insane that he is never getting out. He doesn't have a release date that these violent pedophiles do. And so where are we in a situation with our commission and our legislation to change these laws? Because these guys shouldn't have a release date, not even to a lesser restriction. Because Michael Bill, he's doing life in freaking Monroe prison. So I don't understand, like, where we can go and who we fight this battle with to change these laws. My nieces are victims of abuse and sexual assault, and that guy got 15 years. That was the maximum sentence he could get. They have a whole life of trauma. So how do we change these laws?
So the commission we do not have any say or any kind of jurisdiction or over any kind of criminal laws. This has really directly to do with your legislators. So I would encourage you to contact your legislators in regards to that. We really don't have, that's kind of separate from the commission in terms of, the whole judicial capacity.
Yeah, so what you're specifically talking about is the crime penalty range, and that is explicitly dealt with at the state representative level. So the state representatives are the ones who get together and, like, for instance, right, there's a bill currently that is trying to change the penalty range for assault on a police officer. That completely has to be done through the legislature. That has nothing to do with county commissioners or sheriffs or anyone at the local level. That is all dealt with at the state level. Yes, yes, ma'am.
I would like to give you all another way to contact your state legislatures. Call 800-562-6000. Tell everyone in the state that you know what is happening here can happen there. And a message will be sent and called as many times as you want, all day long. 8 in the morning to 7 at night, Monday through Friday. What is it? 1-800-562-6000. The Washington State Legislative Office.
1-800-562-6000.
6000.
I got a question here.
Yes, sir.
With all that's happening here in McNeal, and you live in the outskirts and all that, you live about 500 minutes away. People that don't live right across that lake.
Yeah.
My question
I'll repeat
to
it.
you guys on how many deputies are you going to start having out there? Because right now you only have one, right?
Correct.
One guy patrolling that whole area. Are you going to put more patrols out there? Is your scheduling going to be different now?
So our schedule is based on call volume, and so the difficulty that we have 5 districts. They range over 700 square miles, and our minimum staffing during the morning and at nighttime is 7 deputies for 155,000 unincorporated citizens. During swing shift hours, it is 8 for 155,000 unincorporated citizens. The issue that we have is that the Lacey urban area that our deputies respond to up there is so much busier and has much more violent crime along the Martin Way corridor. I don't know where to pull a deputy from. That is my concern. And I know that we've always been in the talks with county commissioners about trying to increase those numbers. As of right now, we are currently slated for 56 patrol deputies. I have 34 active working patrol deputies in the county. If we have 56, we would be at 0.55 deputies per 1,000 people, and we'd be in last place in Washington State.
And that'll be these guys' job, right? To hire more, to agree.
It is our job. It is not my county commissioner's job, it is our job. The county commissioners hold the money, I control the culture. I've taken a bunch from you, so I'm going to try and spread the wealth out here a little bit. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Me?
Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to piggyback off your question since you brought up money. Is a county commissioner willing to give you additional funding and resources to bring on additional officers for this specific use? A dedicated officer.
Well, that's where my heart is with law enforcement. But each year, we fund more money when we can. But what this is really all about is an unfunded mandate dumped on you folks by the state of Washington that passed this. And there is a rule about unfunded mandates. They're not supposed to do that, but they seem to be disregarding the whole process. So,
That didn't answer my question.
well,
about
we
Commissioner.
we don't have enough money. Now, I can tell you that we're looking at a law enforcement, I think it's a 0.1% sales tax that might go strictly to the law enforcement community. That could help, but that'll be voted on by the public, and you'll hear more about that. Money doesn't grow on trees. It just, the state legislature is where this whole issue that you're bringing up, we need to bring it to the attention of the state because you have very limited resources. And that's what we're up against today. That's about the best answer I can give you right now. If you make sure you contact the right people, if we get the authority and access to the funding, the sheriff's going to get a lot more. And there actually is some legislation pending this cycle that will address that.
Is there anyone coordinating a meeting like this where we show up on the doorstep of the legislatures and demand they do something? Or is there a way for
They are
us to
currently in
find
session,
out?
they just did that. Yeah, they just did it.
I never heard of that.
Like if we all knew, we'd all go.
Sure.
So how, is there somebody that you can contact to find out about these things so we can show up and spread the word?
Yeah, I think Sarah's probably a good advocate for that. Sarah Fox right back here. Just to piggyback on that, I live here in this county. I've lived here for 19 years, and I don't like paying taxes. Right? But the reality is that when we talk about this kind of stuff, the Thurston County Law and Justice section of the budget is like most of the budget. So when we talk about a sheriff's office that's extremely understaffed and whatnot, the only real opportunity that Thurston County Sheriff's Office has to get to where all the other law enforcement agencies in this state are is to impose a new tax. A lot of them are paying, like Pierce County, for instance, has a law and justice tax that they continue to pay on. It's 0.2% of a sales tax. So, you pay an extra penny when you go shopping every dollar you spend kind of thing, or a fraction of a penny. But that's ultimately what it's going to take, probably, to get to a point. Because every 2 years, the commissioners are usually pretty good about finding us 1 or 2 more deputies. And in that same time frame, we usually get 10 to 15,000 more citizens. And so it just becomes a cycle of always falling behind. But my position on any kind of public safety tax that would be brought forward to the people, obviously the sheriff has to be part of that conversation, is that every last penny would be accounted for so that it can be scrutinized down to the dollar as far as where that money is going to go and what it's going to pay for. What I don't want to do and what I won't support is a public safety tax that comes through as if it's for law enforcement and to get you more deputies out here working the road, and then it goes to all the pet projects. It goes to the Gopher Fund, and then it goes to the assessor's office because they need a security guard to go with them when they assess for whatever it is, right? I don't want any of that. If we're going to do a public safety tax, it is going to be very clear and concise. Hey, this is going to pay for 15 new deputies. That's the only public safety tax I'll support, and I haven't even had those conversations yet. I've been in office for like 26 days. So yeah, I want to take a few more questions. And again, I'd like to discuss some more like positive, upbeat stuff. I know that we can talk about the sex offender house all day long, but I also wanted this to be part of, do you have questions for the sheriff's office or the commission about what we're doing, what we want to do? Yes, sir, you back there. Yep, no, you're looking at me. Yep.
Okay, so in order to do business, you have to have a business license. So do the county commissioners set the rate to do business, for the business license to do business in Thurston County? And if you do, why don't you jack up their rates about $1 million a year?
Well, we're a subsection of the state for one thing, so a lot of it comes down as, just like if you want to get a concealed weapons permit, we don't set that rate. The state sets the rate. We become the sub-agent that issues the license, or the sheriff does. So it's just an example. And we're not allowed to make adjustments that affect one business more than every other business. It all has to be fair. across the board. Even though the state's not being fair to us, when we play, we always have to be fair. So it's the rules that we have to follow. Please get a hold of your elected state legislator and tell your friends around the state, because it's coming to their neighborhood, and if they don't know about it, you can see this doesn't get a lot of publicity until there's some uproar. You know, and the way to get notified basically is through your community.
Yes, sir.
Just a quick comment to everyone here. Please, please remember this and remember what's happening when you vote. And support candidates who will support what you want. Make sure you follow through on that. You have the right to throw these people out of office every 2 years. Please exercise that right.
Yes, sir.
For the commissioners, if the whole process is so lucrative for Supreme Living or any of them to put this in place, why can't the county intercept people and do it ourselves at the county level? They're going to be in Thurston County, put it by the jail or somewhere, build an LRA for this to house it.
We were never even given an opportunity to enter into those discussions. That was one of my main questions in June when we were given a presentation about this, is why isn't the county being engaged about this? If we're the ones being placed with the burden, why can't we decide, and why can't we have a benefit for our, community and decide where to put a facility like this? We were never engaged in any such conversation with the state. We found about this, again, from a community member, and I think that's what we've been fighting with our legislator right now and trying to enter into discussions is, why were we never given an opportunity to have the discussions, or at least, a discussion on where. If you don't want to contract with the county, that's fine, right? But at least given an opportunity to decide on where this facility should go. That's going to be safe, where there are going to be resources. Like we've heard, this area is lacking on resources on a lot of specific areas. And we have been really trying to get these answers from the state, and we just haven't really been able to get any such answers.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I may have an answer in front to that question. I submitted a proposal request to DSHS a couple weeks ago, and I got a response related to the procurement process. They did not go out to bid for the contract with Supreme Living, meaning they didn't do a competitive solicitation, which means there was never an opportunity for another organization or county government to bid on that contract, even though the statute related to sexually violent predators specifies that they were supposed to do an RFP, which is a request for proposals, so that people could compete, so that organizations and governments could compete for that contract. So you're absolutely right. You never had an opportunity because they entered that contract directly with Supreme Living without competition.
Okay. Do we have any non-Tenino sex offender related questions? Yes, sir.
So you said you have 7 deputies on duty usually at any given time. Is there always a canine unit that's on duty, or you call them up as needed even if they're off duty?
Typically, we have almost 24-hour coverage. So we have 2 current canines. We have a 3rd one that's in training. She'll be done here, Rod, very soon. She'll be done very soon, and then the plan is to get back to where we have a 4th canine. And when we have our 4 canines, I think right now are we doing day shift and night shift between the 4 of them?
0800 to 1840, and then a 1820 to 0500.
Yes. So there is typically 3 hours of non-coverage of canine, at which point any canine would be subject to call out. We also have access to all the other canines in the county, so we pool our resources together. So if Olympia doesn't have a canine on, we'll send one out. Tumwater will come out for us. So we have a lot of dogs in the county. We're adding more. So, yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to thank the Thurston County Sheriff's Office. We had a community build playground in Maytown last Saturday, and Sheriff Sanders came out and joined us and on our work party and supported the community. We're going to have a grand opening this coming Saturday, February 4th at 11 o'clock. If anybody would like to come for our ribbon cutting ceremony, we'd like to invite our local commissioners and law enforcement to join us as well. We're going to have hot dog feed, and it's going to be another time where our community can get together and show that we also get together for the good things, not just when we're mad. And I just wanted to let everybody know that that will be happening. So
Thank you. Send me a message and I'll go. Yes, sir.
I have something positive. We can all count on this group of gentlemen here to show us what we need. And all the guys back here and our neighbor, an instance. Was it last week before, the whack job was hanging out around the espresso shop? And we ended up getting chased across town by the Tenino police, and I think the sheriff's office helped out with that too.
I believe so.
Yeah, I know that you guys are there for us.
Yes, absolutely. If you call, we're going to come.
And some of the members of the community are there for you if you need us too.
I appreciate that. I know they do too. So, sitting down, yeah, right there. Yeah.
I'm looking for clarification. A lot of us are working on our land during the day, so is there like this gray area? If they come on my property while I'm on my tractor doing manure work, and they come at me, I know my rights, but can you just kind of, I feel like in Washington State, there's a gray area being outside of your home.
Yeah. The what-if questions are very difficult, but what I would say is that in Washington State, you basically, what they look at in a lot of this stuff is that you just have a duty to not kill someone if you don't have to. That's the idea behind all of Washington State's laws and things like that, is that if you can drive away, if you can walk away, and the person is just doing their own thing, where Washington State allows you to defend yourself from bodily harm. So, yes. Okay.
So, if a predator was to break into my home and they get bit by one of my dogs, my
That
first
sucks.
question
For the dog.
My first question is would my dog be put down
No.
for biting?
No.
Or quarantine or anything? And my second question is would there be any legal
Any legal ramifications?
for me?
Anyone can sue for anything, but I would guess no. Yeah, I would guess no. All bets are off when you came into your house. And your property too. That would include your property. So, yes.
I come and pick up somebody on fraud and what happens?
No. Not to my knowledge. Yes, ma'am.
What is Thurston County Sheriff's typical response time for rural Thurston County?
Cool.
I know it depends on the severity of the call, but what is the typical response time?
What I can tell you is that I cannot recall a time in the 8 years I've been in law enforcement and from being sick, and now we have 2 deputies in the district. So it's based on so many different factors that we would have to nail down specific scenarios to actually use that information. Yeah.
I this is in support of Derek. So last year, so there's one deputy in the data district, but there's also the Tenino Police Department. Last year, your previous sheriff did not let Tenino PD leave Tenino. Didn't want the help. Sheriff Sanders has changed that, and now we're working much closer. We're working patch to patch, and I want to thank him for that. So we're working better together.
Yeah, so to piggyback on that, I have basically came in and said, like, our Tenino guys work really, really hard. But there's no secret that Tenino's a small town. We don't pay as much money. And if you don't have enough officers, how do you bring one off the road to train? So the first thing I did was say, well, why don't we just have them in our training? Well, instead of Tenino having to create their own training plan and figure all that stuff out, why don't we just bring Tenino Police Department in and have them attend the exact same training that we go through, so we are all on the exact same page all the time. And so that's what we did. So Tenino now attends all of our in-service training. That is the goal moving forward, and to me, that's the best way to build a good relationship with the city of Tenino, and also make sure that when our, police training can be really broad. It can be we've seen some crazy stuff from even big agencies where we're like, whoa. And at one point in time, someone probably thought the same thing about us. The best way that we can combat that is to train together. And that way we're all on the same page and doing the same stuff. So yeah, we're looking forward to building a better partnership with Tenino. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering, so you have the Supreme Living, they have their main office. It appears in Martin Way on Olympia. And I'm wondering, do they have some of these residents we're speaking of at other facilities like in Tacoma and Olympia? Or are they only going to be making it so they would only be in Tenino, if you know of that?
I don't know. And I made the comment at the initial Supreme Living meeting that their facility on Martin Way runs pretty well. But it's like a commercial building, right? And all of my experiences out there have been that the people living there were experiencing mental illness, that they were committed because they have schizophrenia and nowhere else to live, and the state has brought them under in contract with Supreme Living. And frankly, I thought it was great. But then she made the comment that, well, some of them are sex offenders there too, but we never really got any clarification. Okay, are these LRAs, are these SVPs from McNeal Island, or is this like the level 1 sex offender who is also extremely schizophrenic and has mental health issues and all these other things? So we never really got any answer from that. In Supreme Living's defense, their Martin Way facility is run pretty well, but it's also not for SVPs. It's for mental health people, and they're getting the intensive care treatment that they need there. So it's not all bad, and that's not the case. I know that you've had your hand up back there.
It is mental health, and they can leave that facility. So I don't know, what spectrum they fall in, but it is mainly mental health for that facility.
Yep. So, yes, sir.
What, if any, impact has the playground had on all of this?
None, because the LRA legislation doesn't have anything to do with playgrounds. It talks about schools. There's a few other things in there, but a playground isn't to my knowledge. I could be corrected if I need to, but as far as I know, a playground isn't in there as far as. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So I have a couple questions.
Okay.
First off, when I was in college, we got to go on a fun field trip to McNeal Island, and we were told that, there were strict rules for us before they even let us get on the boat. And we couldn't wear form-fitting clothing or low-cut shirts. We had to wear baggy sweatshirts, baggy clothes, no big hoop earrings, not a lot of makeup, because there's a bunch of girls, and they didn't want us to look like eye candy, basically. So, even though you felt like that when you were walking through there, so I'm just
My first question is, how is this legal when there's a lake right out the front window that has been, that people have said many, many, many years now, from the 80s, has been used by Boy Scout camps and different blind children camps, and how is this even legal when so many reports of them being out there? It's not something that they just started last year. How is it legal at all for them to put this house there when obviously there's going to be children out there playing in that front yard?
So the general premise is that the reason that it's legal, even though McNeal Island might be a situation where, yeah, if you go into the facility, the idea here is what the state is basically, I'm trying to conceptualize their plan, right, is that a judge has ruled that some of the people at McNeal Island could see someone without baggy clothes. That's the premise that they're trying to get to, right, is that out of the group of people in McNeal Island, that not all of them would fall under that category where they couldn't be around someone who was wearing, something that wasn't baggy sweatpants or anything. That is the kind of premise that we're kind of getting from the state, is that there are people in McNeal Island that once a judge okays it, can become an LRA. They can become a less restrictive alternative, as opposed to McNeal Island lockdown, can't come out.
Even though their crime was probably against women and children, who are going to be the ones out there.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, and then I can add more after.
Yeah, and DOC knows they actually listed that as well as one of their concerns. They said that it's directly in front of a proposed residence, appears to host lakefront activities. So they're aware of this, they listed this as their concern, and again, the court decided to sign off on this.
My second thing is, since we know that there aren't a lot of police officers around, I mean, we've been talking about it for about 20 minutes, is there any way, and who would be able to do this, to make it a mandatory thing for them to have to have some sort of like armed security guard 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, one who has more than 3 days training, who has corrections or police officer experience, just because I think that would make, knowing that these people are going to be there, that would make a lot of us feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that someone just actually can protect us before they leave the field fence.
Yeah.
Is there. So who,
that would be, to me, that is something that needs to be addressed in a piece of upcoming legislation. If the state's going to double down on this LRA model, then they need to include security. They need to include armed security in that piece of legislation. If this is the route that they're going to go, and they've made the decision that they want to do a private corporation contract, well, then that private corporation needs to provide armed security. That would be my really kind of bland proposal. Yes, sir.
I used to work at a Haven institution, and I know that the state is always going for less restrictive alternatives. But sometimes the facility that they're currently in is the less restrictive alternative. Meaning that McNeal Island is probably the best place for them. Because a lot of times you're going to have at least one-on-one supervision for that client, in my experience, and that isn't really a less restrictive alternative when you're being watched day in and day out.
Yes, ma'am.
Earlier in the meeting, Commissioner Edwards had made a comment about, and this is in regards to the letter that was sent to Supreme Living. You made a comment that the regulation, I believe you're referencing Senate Bill 5163 that was enacted in passed in 2021. Is that accurate? Because you made a comment that that bill makes it impossible to use the current county ordinances to stop the process or to put a moratorium on this building. I do have a question. If all of our ordinances just kind of go out the window and we have no recourse, why does the letter specifically state, in bold letters, this, the following Thurston County sanitary code requirements must be satisfied for operation? So why do all the others, like as it pertains to like a special use permit in that process, why does that all go out the window? specifically said that all of our ordinances, zoning codes, and all of that goes out the window. But that's what that letter that went to Supreme Living addresses, and now you're saying everything else just kind of goes out the window.
Give me a second. Let me repeat your
Go
question
ahead.
for everyone. She's wondering, Commissioner Everett's made a comment about ordinances and moratoriums going out the window because of the legislation that was passed in 2021. Yet the letter that we sent to Supreme Living states that they have to, keep up with our septic and those kind of ordinances. The reason why is they don't fall under our land use ordinances and moratorium. However,
Yeah, they do.
However, they do fall under our public health. And that was the piece that, while we were going through the process of land use, which is a completely different department. It's community planning and economic development. However, they still have to comply with public health department, and this is in their contract with DSHS. They have to have a specific septic, they have to have a specific well, and they have to have a commercial kitchen. And so that's how we were able to gather that information and apply it to our own public health codes and ordinances. Two separate lanes of codes and ordinances. While they do not fall under our specific land use, they do fall under our public health and social services.
I want to clarify one other thing too. It was brought up that maybe those that aren't here maybe aren't interested. I can't say that, but I have been up to the legislature all week, last week, talking with all of our elected officials at the House and at the Senate that represent this area. I can assure you this is very much on their radar. They are not here tonight, but when I say give them a call, they need to hear how concerned you are. But I can tell you they are paying attention and working with us in developing legislation that can solve this problem. Much too in-depth for me to try to explain each paragraph as we go along here, because these laws are very complicated. But I just want you to know they are working on this. Our folks right here locally are very much engaged on solving this problem.
Can I just follow up on that? Because I did spend time trying to piggyback off maybe what you are referring to as a legislation. Did you get, I do have a policy of trust but verify. Did you get, and can we find out if you do know, and if not today, then somewhere down the line, where it says in any of the WACs or the RTWs, is it RTWs, is that right? Where that says that all codes just go out the window, because as a county, it seems like we do have a right to, while they do have the right under the fair share principle, they do have a right to be here. I don't remember reading anything that says you can't regulate how they come here.
Okay, without getting into that, if you will refer to the legislation that is enabling this.
I did.
Okay, well, you'll find in there, read the whole thing, because it is in there that they supersede all of our zoning and building codes. They didn't say in that legislation that these people could drink out of a dirty mud puddle or didn't have to have certain kitchen issues. So that's where we're using that as a lever to slow things down. We have a three-stage plan on this. We have a short stage plan, which is trying to slow them down so we can work on this. And then we have a medium stage, where is that going to go? And then we have a long-term stage, and that is get the legislation changed. And that's what we're working on in the long run. We've got a short-term plan, long-term plan, basically. So that's where we're at. It's in there. I guarantee it. I guess I could look it up if I had a second. Maybe the chair's got it here.
Here, yeah.
Where?
So it's under RCW 7105, it's the release to less restrictive alternative. It specifically says, and I'm looking here at the Attorney General's opinion, so that's kind of where I'm reading from.
You're on 71, just to be clear, 71.05?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and this is from the Attorney General opinion that was released on July 27th, 2021. The state reserves exclusive authority to decide where SVP committed under RCW 7109 may reside. So that very specifically gives the authority to the state to decide, and basically does not allow the county to place any specific ordinances to basically dictate where, you know, where they can be placed or not.
Yeah, so in layman's terms, the state basically looked at that and said, you're not going to be able to tell us that you're not going to have an LRA in your county, or that where an LRA can go. However, there is a provision in there that says public health and stuff still has to be considered, right? Like fire codes and things like that still have to be considered. So that's where the confusion lies in between whether or not the county can create ordinances to prevent this from happening, and where the county can still say, you know, you have to have the proper septic, you still have to have a roof on the house, right, that kind of thing. So,
security.
What's that? It's not included in there. That's all dealt with through DOC and DSHS. I know, yes, sir, yeah.
You know, I think it's important for everybody here that we put some institutional history to this so they understand how we got to where we are today. My name is Bob Schilling, and I'm the former head of the Sex and Kidnapping Offender Unit for the City of Seattle. I retired back in 2016 and ended up being the head of crimes against children for Interpol for 3 years. So I know this subject very well. Back in 1986, when Diane Balashotis was killed in Seattle, people were outraged, and rightfully so, because she was killed by a sex offender that was on work release in Seattle. So all these legislators got together and we passed the Community Protection Act of 1990, which Gary and I both testified on, and it passed. And what it did is it gave this state the right for sex offender registration, community notification, and the civil commitment of sexually violent predators. Now, California was the first state to do sex offender registration, but we were the first state in the nation to do community notification and the civil commitment of sexually violent predators. And sexually violent predator is a legal term. Once you have completed your sentence, so whatever your crime was that was a violent sex offense, once you've completed that sentence, whether it's 10 years, 15 years, 30 years, if the King County prosecuting attorney or the Attorney General, because King County handles their own, they're the only county in the state that handles their own, the Attorney General handles every other county. If they file a petition to be for sexually violent predator status, that means that somebody has been convicted of a violent sex offense. Now, the filing standards by both the Attorney General and King County make it more than just one sex offense. It has to be multiple sex offenses. That's how they win all their cases, because it's multiple sex offenses. They take that case and then they go into Superior Court, and it's another trial that's held, and if the jury finds that that person meets the criteria as a sexually violent predator, then they are sent to the Special Commitment Center on McNeal Island. Now, in order to be a sexually violent predator, the Attorney General or the King County Prosecutor's Office has to show that the person committed a violent sex offense, that they have a mental abnormality or personality disorder, and that mental abnormality or personality disorder causes them to be likely to engage in predatory acts of sexual violence. If all three of those aren't there, then they're not civilly committed. There has only been one case that has not where the jury didn't find that the person met sexually violent predator status. That's why the prosecutor's office is so, these cases are airtight before they even go into court. One case, and that case ended up in the city of Seattle. That guy, after the jury let him go, his name was Curtis Thompson, that guy ended up raping another woman. He ended up committing a murder of a woman after sexually assaulting her. And he went after 3 college students at the University of Washington. So these guys are not your typical level 3 sex offenders. They would be a level 4 or a level 5 if it went that high. Okay? So these people are dangerous. Now, the federal courts, I was sued multiple times, as was the chief of police and other sheriffs and chiefs from 1990 when the law went into effect, February 28th of 1990. From that time until about 2000, we were getting sued weekly by sex offenders, by ACLU, by all these other, anybody and everybody was suing us over this community notification and civil commitment law. A federal court said that it was unconstitutional for us to put somebody in, not a prison, but put them in a facility like the SCC and just leave them there. There had to be some way for them to progress to be able to get out. Otherwise, it was unconstitutional. So the state, trying to preempt losing our law, ended up creating the less restrictive alternative. The first one was in Seattle. We agreed to take it because of the fact that we could put it in an industrial area. The city council would only zone for it if they agreed that we had all kinds of input. We actually project managed it. I did. We put it at 4th and Spokane Street. It's a locked facility. It's as secure as King County Jail. Cameras in there, a fence, cement fence with barbed wire around it, but it's not near anybody's residence. The other thing that we did in project managing in this thing is we made sure that the people that were the chaperones that were in there had a Seattle police radio. So that way, if one of these guys took off, they had immediate access to the police. They didn't have to go through 911. They just got on the radio. They had been trained to use the radio. They got on the radio and they said, this is SCTF, Secure Community Transition Facility 1. So-and-so has just left our custody. Boom. Police are right there. Now, it's a little different being that we're Seattle. We have lots of police, around, and it's a lot better response time than, unfortunately, in the counties now, like here in Tenino.
But not even cell phone service.
Huh?
Not even cell phone service in some spots.
Yeah, well, exactly. So, I mean, there's all kinds of ways that this can be handled properly. And the fact that our colleagues from the SCC aren't here, who I know a lot of them, and they're very good people, which surprises me that they're not here, but that's a shame. My 3 grandkids go to this school. I live in Lacey, but my son and my 3 grandkids live here. And I'm concerned, because you just don't put these type of people in a house and say, okay, some private agency is going to be responsible for taking care of this. It needs to be the state doing it in cooperation with the citizens. What we did when we put this facility at 4th and Spokane, I went and met with Starbucks headquarters and all of their employees. We met with all the businesses around there well before the place was even built, just so that they knew, so everybody had their input. This is crazy, you know, to be blindsided like this. Oh, guess what's happening in 3 days? I mean, that's unrealistic. And I would sincerely say that what you need to do is try to get an injunction to keep it from happening and appeal to the federal court, because the federal court, they're the ones that wanted the less restrictive alternatives, but they also wanted it done safely. I read the opinions of all the courts as they were coming down because we were being sued so much, and they wanted this done safely. So, I mean, I think you could go into federal court with an injunction and get this thing stopped until they do what's right. Because the state is trying to supersede you, but the federal government supersedes them. So.
So we are going to wrap this thing up. I'd like to take just 2 more questions if they're not pertaining to the sex offender house. Again, with the sex offender house, we can sit here until next week and answer questions as best we can all day. So if there's 2 questions for either the sheriff's office or the county commissioners that doesn't pertain to sex offenders, we'll take 2 more of those. Yes, sir.
2 positives. One,
We're not taking any more sex offender stuff, sir. So just if someone has a question about the sheriff's office. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say that, you know, our county commissioners and our are the last men and women standing. And we appreciate them, and I think that everyone appreciates them should stand and give them a big round of applause.
I know that Sheriff Sanders just said that he didn't want to hear anything else tonight about the sex offender house because we could be here all night, but people had questions regarding the webinar for Wednesday at 6 o'clock through the Department of Social and Health Services. I do not have that link to the webinar. I think the best thing to do is contact DSHS and ask them where you can get the link for the webinar for this Wednesday at 6 o'clock. That is the only information I can give you right now. But okay, and we do have that Facebook page called The Residents Against Supreme Living. The questions on there like facts, but like Wayne just said, the link is on there, and I encourage you all to